You've spelunked into the Matt Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, it's going to be a light show. We'll see what happens. Sometimes I get myself lathered up into a rant, and I can fill the full 30 minutes, but that'll be an achievement this week. So this week, obviously, we got Real Salt Lake with another game under their belts, and they are in... I can't believe this part that I'm about to say, but they're in playoff position. Yeah, Real Salt Lake. And Diego hasn't scored a goal since he came back from the U.S. men's national team. And somehow Real Salt Lake is 5-1-1 in their past 7 games. I'll dive deeper into that here in a moment. And then some articles being written about BYU men's basketball that if you told me was going to happen 20 years ago, if you told 15-year-old Matt that these articles were being written about BYU men's basketball, and they were not satire, and they weren't comedy, I would not have believed you. I would have been super excited. I would have been giddy, for lack of a better term, but I would have not believed you. I would have called you a liar. So I'll go over that, and then an update about what to look forward to in the show as we get into football season. Because we are a month out. Yeah, we're a month away from college football. Isn't that nuts? All right, so as always, please like, comment, review, subscribe, follow, whatever it is, however you listen. And if you could do me that favor, share this show with just one person that you think would enjoy spelunking. I would greatly appreciate it. That's my challenge to you this week, is to just share with one person that you think would enjoy spelunking. And you can find me on Facebook, The Matt Cave Podcast. You can find me on YouTube, The Matt Cave Podcast. And on Instagram, The Matt Cave Podcast. Imagine that. So, let's go. Let's dive into things with Real Salt Lake. So, Real Salt Lake had one game this week as opposed to the 2 per week that they had for a couple of weeks there against San Jose. And this one was an interesting game because not only was it important as far as standings are concerned, because pretty much every game that Real Salt Lake plays now is very important according to standings, but because of who was on the pitch. And the person that was on the pitch was Chicho Arango. Now, if you remember me last year in the first half of the season, I was singing his praises. He was having a season as good as Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez. He should have been, in contention for MVP, all of that stuff. I was saying all of that stuff in the first half of last year. And I still stand by what I said during that time period because he was that prolific of a goal scorer. He was that important to Real Salt Lake. But then he was suspended for whatever happened, whether it was his attitude with the team, something that happened off the field, away from the facility. Who knows? Only the shadow knows in that one. But after that happened, his attitude shifted, and he was not the same player. And then at the end of the season, Real Salt Lake sold him for a loss to San Jose, and now we are where we are. It was not that big of an upgrade for Chicho. He went from Salt Lake City, Utah to San Jose, California. That's like almost an equal move as far as market size goes. So that was something that Eric Winalda, I talked about him last week. I've been listening to his podcast, and he, if you don't know who he is, he was a wonderful player back in the day, early 2000s, late 90s. He is a U.S. Men's National Team Soccer Hall of Fame inductee in 2004, and he played in Mexico. He played in the U.S., so he's a very good player. And he knows what he's talking about more so than a Landon Donovan or a Tim Howard. I'm just going to say that out front. But he said something that I disagreed with, which is okay. I mean, if you blindly follow people, that's not smart. And I said, what he said was, people didn't want to come to Real Salt Lake because of the market and because it's quiet and all of that other stuff. And I agree to an extent. What he said about Chicho Arango didn't make sense because Christian Arango left to San Jose. It's not like he left to New York or LA, Miami, even a place like Houston, Chicago. Like those would have been bigger markets than San Jose. So I disagree with what Winalda said there, but Otherwise, let's just get back to the game. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. So early on in the game, it did not look good for Real Salt Lake. San Jose kind of dominated the first half and the first part of the first, I would say, 10 minutes of the second half. And Joseph Martinez, if you've been following MLS for a while, this guy was prolific when he played for Atlanta United. He won a couple of MLS Cups there. He was almost by far and away the best striker in the league. And then injuries caught up to him, and now he's with San Jose. So he scored a goal. It's his 10th of the season, and it was a very well-done goal by the three best players San Jose has. And ultimately, it was a cross from Arango to Martinez, who headed it into the back of the net. It should have been stopped by Justin Glad. Justin Glad overplayed. He didn't trust his goalkeeper for whatever reason, and so he overran a potential cross. And so the ball was able to easily go by him. So I put that on Justin Glad. I don't really put that on the wingback that was trying to tackle, and I'm not putting that on the goalkeeper either. Like, you got to trust your teammates, and Justin Glad didn't. He overplayed, trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do, trying to make up for his wingback, or assuming his goalkeeper didn't have the near post. But the ball floated over his head straight to Joseph Martinez, 1-0 San Jose. 6 minutes later, Real Salt Lake gets on one of their, I guess now patented counterattacks, where they flip the field, the ball goes, and the young guys with great speed fly forward. And a wonderful cross comes in from Diogo Gonçalves, and it is knocked into the net by San Jose by Jamar Ricketts, the center back. Game's tied 1-1. A gift. Now, the gift was given to Real Salt Lake by a lot of good build-up and progress, so the mistake was probably going to be a goal anyway, because Xavier Gozo was right there to knock it in the net for Real Salt Lake. So that one was kind of a gift, kind of not. The second goal in the 81st minute from Brian Ojeda was an absolute gift. So Brian Ojeda just knocks the ball on goal. You hear constantly from former players, managers, coaches that when you put the ball on net, good things happen. Same thing in hockey. You put the puck on net, good things happen. Well, the best thing happened for Brian Ojeda in the 81st minute when he just launched a ball at the keeper, and the keeper just deflected it into his own net. 2-1 Real Salt Lake. That would be the score to wrap up the game. Reed Roberts, a rookie for San Jose, got sent off in the 83rd minute. It was classic young player versus veteran of multiple leagues, and the kid swung his arm, didn't even make contact really with the Real Salt Lake player. The Real Salt Lake player, obviously because he's a soccer player, went down like a sack of potatoes, and because of that acting job, the kid got sent off, which sealed the deal for Real Salt Lake to get the victory. So the victory brings Real Salt Lake up to 31 points on the season, a -4 goal differential, and they leapfrog San Jose and Colorado into 8th place. That is playoff position for the boys in Claret and Cobalt. That's wild. Like I said a couple weeks ago, I didn't see this team making it into the playoffs, but with how bad the Western Conference is turning out to be, maybe they can sneak in that 7-8 spot, just because the teams below them are really bad. Colorado is not good. San Jose, we saw them. They could have been better. 2 gifts, and Real Salt Lake comes away with a victory. FC Dallas is not good. Sporting Kansas City, really not good. LA Galaxy is historically terrible. And St. Louis City SC, not good as either. And those are the teams that are behind Real Salt Lake. The teams that are ahead of Real Salt Lake are teams that are probably not going to fall behind them. Teams like Seattle, Minnesota, Portland, San Diego, those teams are not going to fall behind Real Salt Lake. So this is probably the area of finish for Real Salt Lake. 7 to 10 is really where they're probably going to finish. And this is a Herculean effort of coaching from Pablo Mastroeni and his staff. Herculean lift. Just absolutely. This season is because of him and because of Diego Luna. That's what this is. So Real Salt Lake in the playoffs somehow. All right, let's move it along to the uncharted waters for BYU. There was an article written this week from ESPN. It's 100 Days to Men's College Basketball. Came out on July 25th. And it is littered with mentions of BYU basketball. This has never happened before. Not even with Jimmermania. I wasn't alive for Danny Ainge, so I don't know. But this is insane. And they're being mentioned in a lot of different ways. First, obviously, the big one is AJ Dybantsa, the $9 million man, coming in, number one rated recruit, continued to show off why he is the number one rated recruit when he was playing for the U.S. boys national team. Technically, it's the U.S. men's national team under 19, but come on, they're kids. So, I'm going to call it the boys national team. And dominated in the tournament, and the U.S. won gold there. He just kept showing off why he was the number one overall recruit, and his highlights are just stupid. And so he's all over the place, for like player of the year, first overall pick. And then not only that, BYU, don't look now, but BYU is being mentioned as a national title contender. We're not talking Final Four. We're not talking second weekend. We're not even talking like making it to the tournament. ESPN is talking about BYU men's basketball as a national title contender, ahead of such blue blood programs like North Carolina, Kansas, Purdue, Michigan State, Gonzaga. Like BYU's being placed above them, in the neighborhood of teams like Florida, who just won the national championship, Houston, who just played in the national championship, UConn, who before last year won back-to-back natties. I mean, this is unprecedented. 15-year-old Matt is having a field day with this, and adult Matt is nonplussed. Like, I don't know how to react to this. I'm looking at the article right now. 10 title contenders, and BYU is the 6th one mentioned. 6th of those 10. Ahead of Duke, Kentucky, Michigan, and Louisville. Ahead of St. John's. Mike, this is this is nuts. I can't believe this. And another wild prediction is that BYU will win the national championship. They're saying a school that has never won the title will win it this year. And so names like St. John's, Texas Tech, BYU. I mean, looking at the Big 12 this year, it is incredibly top-heavy. You got Houston, BYU, Texas Tech. You've got Kansas, who is always going to be there. It's nuts. And so I don't know how to react to this as a recovering BYU fan. I'd like to say that I root for all teams from the state of Utah, sans Utah State. But this is incredible for the young Matt, who suffered through such terrible BYU basketball teams, like the Steve Cleveland coached, Eric Ainge led BYU basketball team that won like 6 games. Yeah, I remember that team. That's pretty much when I stopped following BYU basketball until Jimmermania. So I just want to tell you all spelunkers that this is nuts. This is unprecedented. And this kind of conversation hasn't happened in the state of Utah when it comes to college basketball since Michael Doliak, Andre Miller, and Keith Van Horn, led by Rick Majerus, when they almost won the national championship. Like, that is the kind of rarefied air that BYU men's basketball is looking at this year. And not only is the conversation about, obviously, AJ Dybantsa and about Kevin Young and the best offense in America the final 3 months of the season, but it's also about Richie Saunders coming back. That was a humongous get for Kevin Young and staff. But also about the transfers. So BYU is also being mentioned in the transfer, conversation. They're also being mentioned in the non-conference matchups to watch, because BYU is playing Connecticut in Boston on November 15th. Oh, by the way, Massachusetts is where AJ Dybantsa is from. And so they obviously got the 10 freshmen to watch, which is AJ Dybantsa, and then 10 transfers to watch. BYU's name pops up again with Robert Wright III coming from Baylor. BYU everywhere. I don't know how to react to this because BYU basketball has never been here, ever. Not with Jimmer Fredette during that entire run, not with Travis Hansen and Rafael Araujo. Yeah, I remember them. Do you? Jonathan Tavernari. Luke Cammard, who is now the basketball coach for the women's team for BYU. This is just crazy. And I'm just going to leave you with that. That's the nugget to take from this. This is crazy. Do I know what's going to happen? No. My prediction is that BYU season will end up pretty much like this past one. Because if past is prologue, even a number one rated recruit coming to BYU will not be able to get the Cougars over the hump into the final weekend. I don't see that. I don't see the depth. And depth wins championships. Always has in college basketball. I mean, just look at Rutgers last year. They had 2 of the top 5 draft picks in the lottery. They couldn't even make it to the big dance. So just because you get the wins in recruiting and in the transfer portal doesn't mean you're going to get the wins. Now, the system that Kevin Young has lends itself to being able to do that, but they need to play defense infinitely better. But my preview for that will be coming up in like 90 days, 3 months, because we're still a ways away from men's basketball. But it's very exciting. It's very exciting. All right. So a couple of updates for you. First, college football preview is going to be happening here in a couple of weeks. I'm still doing my research, still trying to figure out this new era of college football and how to predict. Because all of the models that all of the, air quotes, smart people used previously just don't work anymore. Because there's no talent development anymore. And so some of the things I've said in the past, even, like in the past 4 to 5 years of doing this show, where if you have a lot of upperclassmen, a bunch of seniors and juniors, you're going to be doing better than a team that is full of freshmen or sophomores. That's not the case anymore because those juniors and seniors are transfers. And so they're basically in the same boat as those freshmen and sophomores. So it's a new kettle of fish. I'm very excited about it. I'm not angry about it. It makes me think more, which in this day and age people don't want to do, clearly. And that's why it's taking me a little bit longer to get this preview done. It will be a preview for BYU, Utah, Utah State. I will also do a preview of who I think is going to win each conference. That's what I'm thinking I'm doing here. So expect that here in the next couple of weeks. Also, my EA Sports College Football review, I'm still playing through that. I need to get through more of the games so I can get a better review for it. So that is coming up as well. But otherwise, that's what I'm doing. A little behind the scenes. I am trying to get my system and my setup to the point where I can start doing video podcasts and stuff too, where it's not just going to be me talking into the camera. Don't worry. I won't subject you to that. My goal is to create a sort of Sports Center-esque type feel where, I'll be on camera a couple times, but mainly it'll be like graphics that I create so that you can follow along, and then also some highlights that I might pull as well. So that's what I'm trying to do for the podcast. And then I'm also interviewing with a podcast network to do a Utah Mammoth-centric podcast for them. Nothing is set in stone. It's still very early on in the process. I have a second interview with them coming up this week, but I will let you all know how all that goes. Don't worry, though. It won't take away from this program. This is my baby, and this is what I want to grow. And so this one is still going to be first and foremost for me. But that's the show this week, everybody. I know we're 10 minutes from the 30, so I appreciate you all being here. Next week, maybe there will be more news. Maybe the Mammoth swing another trade. Maybe the Jazz cut half their roster. Who knows? But I'll see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.